one step at a time. The first thing is to introduce you to the poisons. What we mean, what I mean when we talk about poison. So the first statement, I think, which is important, is that liberation, we use that term, awakening, enlightenment, these terms we use, that process begins right here. So, and the methodology we use for moving towards liberation is actually turning towards our actual lived experience. So Buddhism is not really interested actually in theories. What Buddhism is trying to say is what is going on in this experience of being embodied with these longings, with these aversions. What is actually taking place here, and how can we engage in it in a productive way? And particularly recognizing that we have a rising sensation. So we all know we have these things happening through the body-mind, and then we have a response to those sensations. And in that territory is usually where what we describe as the poisons arise. They arise within this space between the bare sensation and our response. So this is the territory that we're going to be exploring over the next few weeks. So what is poison? So it's good to actually try to define a poison. So we describe anything really that corrupts, distorts, veils or clouds this path that we're trying to tread, this path that leads to more meaningful states of being. So I'm hoping that that somehow kind of brings the fact that poison is actually something that we'll all be very familiar with. It will be in our lived experience. That we will know that on occasions there's a longing to move in a particular direction, there's a longing to become, there's a longing to embody, to take ownership of a particular part of our experience, and then something comes across it which distorts, which clouds, which veils this very immediate natural state of being, which we, on some levels, we know already. So the poisons are there distorting those kind of really well, describe it as meaningful. We could talk about value, meaning, value. And in Buddhism, these poisons, this kind of sense of it being a poison, the poison's described, the technical term is a klesha. So klesha is the sort of the technical term for a poison. And really what these poisons are, they're there in some ways to protect us. So, which is kind of a slightly, maybe a slightly confusing term or kind of way of seeing it. The poisons have certainly been serving us for how many lifetimes we don't know. But they're ways of being that we tend to grip or bind to that resist these three things which we kind of taste, we kind of drop into on occasions, and we kind of recoil from these places of experience. So we recoil from this sense of impermanence. We recoil from recognizing actually we are utterly insubstantial. There's nothing here which is going to always be present. It's all arising and passing into and out of being. And ultimately, the more that we try to control this sense of impermanence, of flow, and interconnectedness, actually, the more we try to control those kind of states, we are led to a place of unsatisfactoriness, that we find life of discomfort, if not suffering. So this is the kind of actions, the surface level at least of the poisons, is that they are there. They're kind of methods that we've learned to protect ourselves against this direct experience. Does that make any sense to anybody apart from me? The trouble is, I've been thinking about this for quite a long time, and I haven't actually articulated it, but to you. So I might know what I'm talking about, but because I've been thinking about it, but I just want to check you're actually with it as a kind of line of thought. Hopefully, if you kind of looked into Buddhist ideas, this will be familiar to you. Is there a question before we kind of rumble on? So, okay, so what I've described is that this, what we're tending to do here is that we're resisting the reality of our experience, and the way we resist that tends to manifest or is described as being poisons. So how do we go about the transformation of these poisons into wisdom? Well, I think the first thing is that the more that we can see that the nature of poisons tends to be that they are compulsive defense strategies. We're defending against this sense of fluidity, of flow, of that actually there is no core here to our experience. There's always this arising and passing of conditions which carries within it the whole territory of meaning and value. But if we try to lock in a particular way to what is arising, we defend ourselves by trying to hold ourselves in a particular shape, we create poison. So much of Buddhist practice, as far as I can see, is about trying to let go of the breath, to relax the body, relax down through the whole being, and through doing that we gradually let go of the bind of the mind, the conceptualizing mind. So the process is of gradually relaxing and opening to that which is always present. And this process naturally will lead us to the wisdoms of the Buddha. It's as if the more we can really relax and become present, then that which we deeply know and deeply are in touch with can live through us, in us. So the wisdoms aren't something over there, outside of this place. They're simply being obscured by our habitual ways of being. So we're looking at this capacity to transform simply by opening and relaxing and being with what is actually here. So obviously the big question is, where's this transformation taking place? How do we transform the poison into wisdom? Where does that take place? And the revelation, as far as I'm concerned, is that we can't control the knowing of sensations. So sensations are arising outside of our control. So we've probably all done the experiment of trying to foresee what our next thought is. It's just impossible. So we are simply flow, but somehow we kind of create this fantasy that we are actually something solid and something real, something with permanence. But we are simply a field of arising sensation. And within that, running alongside that, those arising sensations, is the feeling, the hedonic tone, as it's called. Just so the immediacy of the feeling is, ouch, oh yes, like more of that. So it's that kind of battling to and forward with our experience. But actually, again, that's something that we have no control over. We can't control those responses of yes please, in that sense. So those are always there. So what we're being invited to do through Buddhist practice and this series of inquiries is that we are invited to turn towards and sift through these compulsive responses, these habits, and these identification with particular states of being. And we bring them all into what I think is this very beautiful bowl of awareness. Now, what I really like about this particular image is that the bowl has actually been dropped and it's broken, and it's been brought back together. It's been lovingly attended to bring it back to wholeness. And there's something about awareness as a process is we're opening more and more to the whole of our being. We're holding more and more of who we are, of what this sort of range of experience, this range of sensations is within us. So we're building this capacity to hold our experience, to hold this flow of arising and passing sensations. And we will, unfortunately, once we start to look into that bowl, we will see that we are driven, well, all of us, I would suggest, are driven by compulsions to act in particular ways, to hold particular views, to respond in particular ways, to be identified with particular ways of being. And all of these we place into this cauldron of awareness. This is the invitation. We sit, we live, we move in awareness, developing this capacity to really be fully with our experience. Because only out of that wholeness, out of that whole field of attention, can we then begin to notice that which is really alive, that which is really spontaneous, creative, opening, enlivening. This is also sits within the cauldron. It's not anywhere else. These things, that these kind of ideals of Buddhist practice that we talk about, they are right here. They're not going to kind of be implanted from some other place. It's more a process of opening and releasing into that which is already here. So this is a bit of a preview in a way of the image that will be coming next week when we start to look at the Wheel of Life. So what we have in the centre of this image is actually a representation of the what are described as the three primary glaciers, the three main poisons, but I won't talk about those tonight. But just to say that we have this whole range of feelings arising within us, and we have a response. And between that space, what comes into it, what is recreated endlessly and so tiring, is habits and views. Keep just veiling that very immediate responsiveness that is also part of our nature. We tend to kind of filter our responses to match or to reinforce our habits and our views. So, okay, just check. Any questions? Any kind of still with it? Well, I'm hoping it. I keep hoping it's straightforward, and I hope it is. I do hope it is. So let's carry on. So we have. I'm just going to say a little bit now about this central territory. So there's a lot of words on that image there, but let's just work through it a bit at a time. So what we're trying to do in Buddhist practice, as far as I can see, is that we're trying to transform all this material that we are dragging along with us from moment to moment, day to day. We're bringing along with us our compulsive habits, our views. And these have been learned, been taught to us through a whole range of different layers of our experience. So we have, of course, the first thing is that every one of us has got a personal history, that we've all had events happen in our life, we've all participated in life, and that in doing that, certain events have arisen that have then affected how we respond in the future. So we'll all have had these periods or events, experiences that in some ways are either too much to hold in consciousness, or certainly are too painful to kind of stay with, or they are too beautiful to stay with. They're too outside of our kind of way that we usually understand ourselves and the world. So all of these things within our personal history we'll be tussling with, trying to kind of hold them in a particular shape that will allow us to negotiate safely through our life. So we have our personal history, which of course is comes in great part from our family of origin. So where we began our lives and all the learning that we took from our early experience will be feeding into our current views and ways we're responding to our life. So it's something that we shouldn't dismiss. I think we can kind of, my own sense is that it took me quite a long time to acknowledge that in order for me to engage more fully with my own life, I first have to kind of start to explore and engage with the conditioning that has sort of carried me so far. We will all be dragging around these kind of sacksfuls of influences. Oh. And it's hard work. It's really tiring. But we do it because we have a desperate need to be safe. So it's absolutely reasonable that we take these precautions, that we pick up and maintain these learned ways of being. And we learn it by looking out into the field of relationships in the family. And of course, those sets of learned behaviours will have been learned from the previous generation and the previous generation. So there's a whole layering and depth of knowing or learned behaviours that we are swayed to. We kind of sway to those forces at play in our own personal life. And again, that's something that we can kind of try to override or ignore, but actually it will be there. So this turning towards is really one of the methods that we start to unpack the field of influence from multi-generational families, the family field. Then beyond that, we have the collective cultural influences. So here we are in the 21st century, and along with it, there's a whole value system that is underpinning the society that we live in, the education system that we receive, the kind of structures of relationship that we engage in. All of these have been kind of created by this wider field, by the society that we inhabit. And then below that, finally, we also are under the influence of really a source of meaning and value which has been carried through time with mankind, which connects us to something beyond this enclosed system. I would say that art or the arts really point us towards this whole other realm of experience that opens this into ways of knowing which often we have become desensitized to through these other possible influences. So this really kind of core levels of our being carry these archetypal, archaic symbols. So if, as I was doing earlier, I talked about sky, man, since he became a thinking, knowing, feeling being, knew that experience of sky and kind of built on that image, that knowing, and created a whole area of symbolism out of that experience. Earth. We mention earth. On some way we know what that means. Night. We know that experience. So these kind of very primary experiences take on symbolic form. So all this material is important to explore, to investigate. We are conditioned beings, and we are conditioned through these different layers. This is the human state that we find ourselves in. We are arising and passing within and influenced by this whole field of conditioning. And the invitation is that can we begin to sift through Because what I don't want to suggest is that every thing that we gather towards ourselves, everything that we kind of hold on to is necessarily poison. It's actually some things that we lean into for support, for encouragement, are really important values. So the obvious one is the value of friendship. We know what it feels like to have that attention, to be witnessed, to be seen by another, how important that is. So that's a value that we wouldn't discard as being ours. It's just another conditioning. We need to kind of start to sift through, to recognise what is really skillful and unskillful within our habits and views. So I'm using the term skillful and unskillful very consciously. So in Buddhism, we are desperate for you to know that there's no right and wrong. There's absolutely kind of not a helpful perspective. There's not good and bad even. What there is skillful and unskillful. The skillful is said that which leads towards, invites, encourages us in the direction of liberation. That which is seen to be unskillful are those habits and views and ways of being that are restricting and binding us into a particular position, keeping us out from the liberated state. So to really start to sift our experience and start to make choices is this process of transformation. But we have to start at the beginning with all that we have here in our cauldron. So this is we're going to leave the first evening, just to leave you with that image, if you like.